Welcome back to the Comfy Chairs, a podcast from 123 Limited. This is your host, Kate. We are a cat household, and if you, like us, have spent any time around cats, you've experienced curiosity in its purest physical form. Our kitten Inez cannot bear to sit still if she hears anything in the next room. Her intense and innate curiosity drives her to chase after every noise, play of light, and dust mote. Well, I can't say that I relish pulling her off of the ductwork in the basement. I am still endlessly entertained by all of her curious adventures. What is it about curiosity that makes us forbearing and tolerant with cats, toddlers, and even our colleagues? I think it's safe to say that we all experience some level of curiosity, and we can readily see the benefits it can bring. Early psychologists talked about curiosity as an impulse to better cognition. My own belief is curiosity is the spark that fuels empathy and, ultimately, great learning and leading. Higher levels of curiosity have been associated with positive emotions and psychological well-being, increased performance and engagement, and deeper connections with the people around us, showing us that curiosity benefits us psychologically, professionally, and personally. Because of these research findings and my own experiences, I am going to make the claim that curiosity offers us joy. That's all well and good. Great, even. But what does this mean for the workplace and for leaders? And that's what we'll be exploring in today's episode. Welcome to the Comfy Chairs. Tatyana, thank you for joining me. I'd like to take a moment so that you can introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Kate, for welcoming me. My name is Tatyana Sanikovich, and I am an HR consultant and an executive coach. And I generally work with leaders and organizations in moving through change in a mindful way and still keep their sense of joy in their lives. So that's kind of where I'm at. I come from an HR background in hospitality and nonprofits and retreat centers. And now I run my own business and help all kinds of organizations in a meaningful way. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm very excited for our conversation. When we first met, like, oh, this is somebody I could talk to for ages. And I know even before we hit record, we were chatting for about 20 minutes. So
I exactly thoroughly enjoyed it as well so far.
Yeah. And I think we have demonstrated kind of the thesis of today's conversation too, how curiosity does drive and give us joy. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about the thing that we're experiencing in the moment. So let's start with the big, broad question. What is curiosity exactly? And how do we experience it, both inside ourselves and with other people and their behaviors? What are your thoughts?
I think for me, and definitely, I also looked up at like the dictionary definition just to see like what's the dictionary say. And in Oxford Dictionary, at least what I found was it said curiosity is a strong desire to know or learn something. And for me, it is like if I step aside, it is that desire and drive to learn, to get to understand somebody or like seek understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me, where curiosity comes from within and also how sometimes it exhibits. I think with people, when it comes in behaviors in people and other people's behavior, it's those open-ended questions that we ask, that's not just a yes or no, that gets the person to tell a story. It's this ability to listen. For me, curiosity is a lot of listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond, that we humans tend to do a lot of times. And then also it's the part of the kind of the willingness to experiment and admit uncertainty. Yeah. What about, yeah.
Oh, for me, the word I wrote down in my own notes for this was craving. Um,
Mm.
Craving for something new or more, and it's usually knowledge, information, and sometimes it is craving that is like a hunger, depending on
Yeah.
how, how big the curiosity is. As I've been listening to you and thinking about, that curiosity shows up in our questions and in our listening, what occurs to me are kind of two parallel things. One, I am going to guess that there are some cultural differences in how curiosity shows up and how it's perceived. And I don't know that I'm necessarily equipped to really talk about that, but I think it's an interesting thing for us to consider and just have in our awareness. But knowing that not everyone's going to receive your curiosity in the same way, it's a reminder to me, because I'm definitely, talking to myself in this, is managing your curiosity, corralling it a little bit, and using your awareness of yourself and the other person. So it is kind of this like conversational skill that's at the next
Mm-hmm.
level of, it's not just, oh, are we engaged, but am I staying curious about how you are? I was sharing with you that is something I have to really pay attention to myself in, because I will have these questions pop up and I'm like, oh, this person might be able to answer this, or I've not thought of it this way before. And I know if I'm not managing myself, that I can take conversations, whether it's work or social or other, well off track and down odd
Mm.
roads. And especially when I was younger, I had a penchant for asking really personal questions, and shame on me for that. And it's not like rudeness or bad manners. It's genuine curiosity about the other person. So I think that's one of the things for us to consider in this conversation, particularly as we think about the type of people you and I might coach, my listeners as well, that as a leader, are you are you applying your curiosity appropriately to the situation,
Oh,
and
I really,
thinking about
yeah.
it as a skill, but also as a tool that needs to be used appropriately and sometimes even sparingly.
Yeah. I really appreciate you bringing it up, but also what resonated with me when you were speaking earlier is there's definitely a cultural piece
Mm-hmm.
to how the curiosity that we know in terms of the English speaking world and being present in the United States, how that might land actually in other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're speaking about open-ended questions or being curious about the person in their life, the line in other cultures is quite different. It could be quite different. So understanding is we're kind of pulling together. I think in the Russian speaking culture, and I've been in the States for a while, however, there is a very different, there's a different approach. In particular, sure, you can ask open-ended questions and it's shifting now, but definitely years ago or before, it would not be a tell me more kind of statement.
Okay.
And there's a part to where I'm from in former USSR that there is, and everybody can look at communism and all that stuff. All of that trains people to think and behave a certain way, particularly when it comes to their safety.
Yeah.
So when somebody is asking you, tell me more, I can tell you, I mean, it's much different here now. But if I'm there, even now visiting, my ears will perk up and I'll be like, why do you need to know? If I come back to leadership and just overall, if we're speaking even from leaders that we work with here, in the United States, and if they work in global companies, it's that curiosity of how do you bring your team
Mm-hmm.
together in a meaningful way, but also like ask the questions that are conducive to whatever you're trying to create. And how you were saying, what I really liked, pay attention how your questions are landing
Mm-hmm.
and adjust accordingly. But that's all back to that presence and awareness. It's also the trust, like how you would build trust, because again, depends on the culture, how open you make the communication. And some cultures would like it a little more closed, you know. We do know now with all kinds of research, without curiosity, you cannot drive innovation. So, and all the companies are all like, that's the hot word, one of the hot
It
words
is one of the many hot
of
words.
of today. One of the many hot words is innovation. Well, you won't innovate without curiosity, like at all. You know, it definitely fosters growth. That's the leadership piece. And I think the last one for me with curiosity is empathy, but you kind of, I think,
Hmm.
spoke to me, is a part of paying attention how it lands back to that awareness as well, is that empathy is essential to understanding how people around you navigate anything, actual life and work, and it's all together. It's never separate, even though a lot of times we would like it separate in different beautiful boxes.
It is not.
They will all kind of seep together. And so that to me, it really, all of those tools, you know, as people will say, well, how do I build trust? And how do I, you know, do the team togetherness? And all of those things, it takes time, but it also takes like a very committed intention,
Hmm.
and also like your ability, like your presence and the quality of your presence with your team for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as I've been listening to you, what's occurred to me is that in the conversation about leadership, you know, one of the things in my notes to you I talked about is, why does curiosity matter in any
Mhm.
conversation about leadership? You've covered this great punch list.
Mhm.
What I think curiosity is a mindset. It's a lens.
Mhm.
It's a behavior, a skill. It serves a lot of different purposes for us in the world in general. What we do know is that that curiosity in humans is what has contributed to our evolution, um, to our advancement. It is part of how we survive by staying alert and engaged with our surroundings. Um, so it has all of these functions for us, and thinking about this human shared experience, feeling, tool, all the things that it serves, it's so important for leaders to understand, how am I using it? How are my team engaging with it? And how am I making it safe
Yeah.
when I approach them with my own curiosity, and for them to be curious and questioning as well?
Mhm. I think the safe piece is for sure, you know, there's,
Mm-hmm.
as you were saying about scientific proof, and sure, we're not clinicians, but we read a lot of data and we read a lot of, you know, papers and stuff. And it's that part of the, you know, what is sometimes called psychological safety, or just overall the sense of safety in us humans. It's a basic, you know, need. And so when it's not met in certain ways, or we don't feel safe, we won't be curious either, or we won't be expressing or responding to the person who might be curious about something if we don't feel safe. So not putting it all on the leader, or not putting it all on like one person or individual,
Mm-hmm.
but it's back to the awareness and paying attention to how safe is this environment and what can be done to make it safer. Just because, if you know, if we're curious and we're asking some questions, we must be wanting some to understand something. And
Yeah.
so to get that information, or to receive some feedback, or just to some gain some understanding, that comes from a place of safety. And so I think for me, in experience, particularly as an HR consultant, a lot of times people are like, oh, we want feedback. And I always go, well, what are you going to do with it, first of
Yes.
all?
Yes.
Right? That's the biggest piece always. Like, we want the survey and we want the feedback. And I said, if you're not planning to do something with it, please don't do it, because that's a killer. Like, that's literally a morale killer. It's really hard to get out of that later. So it's like, don't dig that hole if you don't have to. And it's also with people, with humans, we're all human. We take things, some take things a lot more personally than others. And
Hmm.
so we go, yeah, I might have an open door policy, give me any feedback. And then we get upset at the person giving the feedback. Or again, we're not listening with curiosity to understand what is it, but we're just, how do we rebuttal it? How do we react or
Yeah,
respond in a professional way? But the person knows I'm really, really, really upset. And so those are the things that does not create safety.
it does
So,
not.
and I've been a leader and there've been difficult conversations and difficulties in the same department, the same organization. There's always two, like at least two people to every situation and every conversation. So what part are you playing? I would always ask, what part am I playing here? How am I showing up? And how can I do different for the person for the person to respond differently? And I can't highlight enough how consistency is really important, in terms how you're showing up in challenging way or in a encouraging positive way. At least
Hmm.
it's consistent. So anyway,
I
yeah.
no, I really, really, really like this space we've found ourselves in so quickly about feedback,
Mm,
because curiosity is such an important element of the feedback process, whether I'm seeking it out. So
yeah.
I'm curious to know what you think about me, how I show up, or in leaders' big responsibility of delivering feedback to people. Unfortunately, people tend to equate feedback with negative, with constructive.
Yeah.
It can, of course, be positive, but if you do feedback without curiosity, it's it's essentially storytelling. It's not really feedback. Um, and this is, I think why curiosity is unfortunately often left out of the leadership discussion, despite the importance it plays, is that we've created this mental model of leadership as having to be all knowing, all confident, all right all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And sometimes the confidence needs to be, I'm confident that I can't know everything. So let
Hmm.
me get curious about
I
this.
love it. Yeah, I love it.
And, look, okay, so Kate didn't didn't meet a deadline. I'm not going to assume I know. I'm confident that I can't know everything about this. Let me get curious. Let me
Mm.
find out what happened. Why did things not go as intended? When I train and coach people on delivering feedback, it's what, why, how, question. Four things.
Yeah.
It's crazy simple. Here's what happened without any interpretation. It's like playing the tape back. Here's why it
Yeah.
matters in a business context. And that can be, here's why it's great, right? Not just
Hmm.
here's why it's an issue. Um, how you deliver it. You need
Hmm.
to be direct and kind in equal parts.
Yeah.
Support, celebrate, whatever it looks like. And then ask, what do you think? Or is there more I need to know? Or do you see it differently?
Hmm.
So feedback has to be based on curiosity if it's truly effective. And when you're seeking it for yourself, as you've pointed out, if you are not open and keeping the space safe for people, your curiosity is going to be met with barriers.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, barriers and guard kind of very
Mm-hmm.
guarded.
Yeah.
And so you're not gonna get the feedback that you want.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I think like I wrote it down actually because I was like, I actually as a mantra, I'm confident I don't know everything. There are so few people that walk in a space or lead from
Mm-hmm.
that space, actually.
Yeah.
As like yesterday, we were working through something with an organization, the client. It's that piece actually. It's when the person has, which I call them like having their knuckles too tight, kind of like
Yes.
fists and knuckles too tight. Is they like, here's the list, this is how things go, here's how it's always supposed to go. And if there's any delineation or any change, so there's definitely control piece. but it's also with like, I can tell you they don't come to the situation with this with a feeling or even actually approach is I'm confident I don't know everything. They're definitely coming to this particular occasion, they're confident they know everything, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore somebody made a mistake, and that's outside of this plan. And it comes with very difficult experiences for people
Yeah.
on both sides, and so it's just like being, the intermediary and receiving, just kind of like, as you also correctly saying, the stories. All we have, we were not there, we're not in that situation. We also come, when we're in certain situations, we also come with a different power, different, kind of dynamic and
Mm-hmm.
status. So I try to be mindful and aware of that, that if I'm in a situation, people won't behave the same way because they know what place I take, you know what I mean, where I stand or what role I am in. And so that really comes with a different territory, but it's just that part of knowing, like, no, I know this is how it's going to go. And if it doesn't go this way, what happens? I'm listening to people's stories
Mm-hmm.
and trying to piece it together, where each story, just like what you were saying, what happened, why it matters. Like, as a person saying what happened, I'm listening to two people's stories of the same occurrence,
Mm-hmm.
and they have like quite a different story.
Yep.
And I
That's
go,
exactly
okay.
right.
Yeah. And it's
Exactly right.
like, and I think the asking, like, I really like your ask at the end piece of like, ask, is there anything else, whether, or is this landing correctly? Is this like, am I understanding this correctly? And I always try to check with people as well. It's like, please, like, kind of tell me what you heard me say or something like that. You know what I mean? Did I get that?
Mm-hmm.
It's People always add something, almost all, like maybe 98%. There'll be 2% like, yeah, you got the gist, or this is fine. But a lot of times a person will correct something and it actually changes, like the flavor, the
Mm-hmm.
texture, the just like the overall meaning of a thread. And you go, oh, this is why this matters to you,
Yeah.
and it really makes people feel heard, just because you are listening. And in order to tell them, like, this is what I heard, you really have to listen.
Yeah. I wonder if sometimes leaders turn away from curiosity because it does take more time. It does mean that things may not be resolved quickly. Uh,
I think 100%,
yeah.
actually. It
Yeah.
depends on organizational culture, and it also depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
And actually how, like, I've also seen people who would like to be more curious and spacious, because it has to come with spaciousness, and so it's interesting, because what we're saying too is like, you've got to create spaciousness for people to be curious, because it doesn't just happen on the spot, like, okay, right now we're all going to get curious. It's like, okay, hold on, give it a second, or a little more than that, or depends on the topic that people want to get curious about. You have to create the container. That takes time, right? And with curiosity, as you also said, you're literally innately, like, that is actually in your makeup. Now that I'm, getting to know you, curiosity is truly in your makeup. I actually, one year, I mean, some level of it was in my kind of, we're all humans, but every year I pick a word that I want to embody or practice more. And one year was curiosity. In anything that came my way, I watched myself, instead of closing, to be like, oh, I know how this is going to go. I had to slow down and go, what in this instance, in this occurrence, what can I learn and what can I ask, even one question?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I definitely trained myself to be a lot more curious from where I started. When you were saying, like, oh, the curiosity to you, it comes so natural. I think where I was heading with this, that it's not for everybody, that it's a natural occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, it's a thing, it's a skill, it is a mindset, though. I completely agree with you, actually, because you've got to look at everything not from a closed perspective, but from an open. That's work.
It is. It definitely is. And it does, I know it can slow things down because you
Uh-huh.
can end up asking, You can ask too many questions. You can chase too many interesting ideas. Even though humans have curiosity baked into them, there are people where it is more natural to let the curiosity run rampant or go there first. And then there are people where, for whatever reason, it doesn't come as easily. And I think I think very quickly I could ascribe that to personality, upbringing,
Mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
education, all the experiences. But starting with that, just being curious about yourself and why is this something that I feel I have to put effort into when it is a human trait. Uh, Getting curious about you is a great starting place for developing the mindset and skill.
And I think for me, I'm absolutely, I mean, you're definitely preaching to the choir in a sense, but where I'm also go, it backs to the personal development and the desire to learn and change things. The same thing, it comes from an individual going, I want to take space and time to get to know myself, and I'm curious why I do what I do. That is, I mean, hence I say that's spiritual work in a sense,
Mm,
because you really got it. That's personal development, that's growth. It's uncomfortable because we're all gonna find all kinds of things.
yeah.
And it's back to your what you were saying. It takes time. And in our day and age, at the moment, and sure, we'll all say this, like time is the only non-renewable resource. Yet it feels like it speeds up. And so that sometimes could be as a luxury, which I don't think so, because we're still going to end up in trying to figure out who we are and what we're about. But it's back to yours. It takes time. It
Mm-hmm.
takes setting time aside, even without, before you even be like, oh, yeah, what am I about? Why is this the way it is? And and setting that time to explore.
This is where I would like to, because I think it feels very natural to me to introduce the way that you work, the whole
Mm,
person approach that you take in your coaching and
yeah.
your development of other people. Um, just as a good practice, if you could define that. But I think as we've talked about the knowing yourself, studying yourself,
Yeah.
empathy, curiosity, this is where I see a very natural segue into talking about whole person. And obviously,
Hmm.
you and I have a coaching view,
Yeah.
but then how do you lead that way as well?
The whole person approach to me is that we are we are a whole person wherever we show up, whether we are a a sibling, a parent, a child to somebody, or a leader, or an individual contributor, or whatever our or a business owner, whatever all of the what we say sometimes hats that we wear, all of those parts are a part of a whole. It's all us. We just get sometimes to choose to be like, oh, I'm going to be this. However, to me, when we, particularly as we work with leaders, when we lead people, the whole person approach is to understand who you are as a person. What are your values? What's your personal journey? What's your background? Where do you come from? Probably what are the traumas that you've kind of
Mm-hmm.
encountered and gained on this journey that brought so much wisdom, but they trigger things in you. How conscious of all of that? So that's back to that awareness and consciousness in terms of a leadership. How conscious are you of all of that in you? And there are qualities to me that are innately mine, my strength, and there are qualities that I have challenges with. They're going to show up, whether I'm a mother, as I'm coming as a mother and talking to my teenager, or I'm coming as a leader or a business owner, because you can think you can compartmentalize things, but trust me, you cannot. That is the whole person approach to me. And so when I'm working with the leader and I help them, I think, on the journey of to kind of know thyself, your values, your innate, like what matters to you foundationally, it's going to permeate everywhere. And I encourage the leaders to understand that curiosity piece is like, then get curious who your people are that work for you and work with you, just like you are. There, everybody has a story. Everybody comes from somewhere. When we know a little bit more and are curious about humans, just humans around us, when we're when we bring humanity, I'm a big proponent of that, is bringing humanity no matter where we go. That's kind of, the whole conversation of mindfulness and joy is that this is our only life on this planet at the moment.
Yeah.
So how we live it and how we kind of every step of every day matters for the quality of that life. And so it's being curious about people around you. And yes, we're all in this together. We're doing the work together. How we do it makes a difference. And so that's kind of where I come to the whole person
Hmm.
approach for themselves, but then also look at other people,
Yeah.
what inspires them or what's happening in their life right now that's challenging. So then you get to understand them more. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing up trauma as well.
Yeah.
That for me stretches back to where we started thinking about cultural differences. And in the broadest definition of culture, that's where you can start thinking about what are the boundaries, the
Mm,
triggers, the trauma, the the sore spots that people have. You mentioned pain points,
yeah.
and that got me thinking. I've my whole adult life essentially I've used the idea of people being broken, and that's trauma that we're talking about there.
Yep.
And curiosity is a way to discover those places by giving your attention to other people, which demonstrates care.
Absolutely.
And the word that I'm trying to be bolder about using is love. Because
Mm,
I really do think one of the things that's missing from the conversation about leadership in the modern workplace is that leadership should be an act of love. And curiosity is such an easy entree into demonstrating that you care about and want good things for the people that you work with, whom you serve as a leader. Because if you're asking, what are your values? How do you feel about things? What is your background? What are the hard things for you?
hmm
You can then always respond with care. You mentioned uh, in talking about how much more time and being curious can take, how it is a non renewable resource. We have limited
Yeah.
time and unfortunately don't know how much time we have at the end of the day. So, in this conversation, I do think we have to make a little bit tongue in cheek, but we have to make the business case for curiosity because what makes devoting time, attention, and energy to being curious, what makes it worth it for leaders?
Mm. You're asking the person for whom connection is one of my fundamental values. And so, and just like that humanness, humanity, peace, and empathy, but definitely connection. And I really loved how you brought the leadership as act of love. Like I definitely am working with that a lot more now to be like more bold with that word. Um, so for me, what's in it, um, so for me, that's a value, it's connection. So that's a very easy one. What's in it for others, so it's actually touching in to finding out for each person, there's something in their values that's gonna matter.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, I would connect curiosity to one of those values. If for somebody actually it is delivering result, like if they're very result driven, and it's neither, it's I'm not qualifying, but it's like I really want to see us achieve that goal, I can tell you that curiosity in your team and you as a leader will get you to that goal with different actually perspectives and different variations of outcomes than you thought if
Mm-hmm.
you do it without it, right? Or your team, you have a retain it, like you retain staff a lot longer if you express that curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Just overall, curiosity is kind of releases dopamine for people because it's a rewarding experience. We're getting into this like, oh, I'm learning something, or so it's creating that like feeling good sensation. So for each leader, I would pick literally look at your values, just top three. And in one of them, curiosity would be like how this would help you with that. So for me as a leader, it was always connection in
Mm-hmm.
whatever, realms I would work in. And so that would always create connection. Absolutely. Like it's an easy one for me. For somebody, it could be I'm just trying to think of other, kind of like what the values. There's resilience, for example, for
Yes.
somebody, and that's their value. And so, in understanding your people and who your people are and how they operate in this world, will create resilience for them and for you as a leader. You will be a much more resilient team. And so, for me, that would be how I would look at it. Yeah.
Going back to the idea that curiosity can take more effort for some people, if a leader is one of those people for whom curiosity is effortful, they can still encourage it and allow it to flourish on their teams.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be something that they value deeply, but there is a benefit that's derived from employees having uh, tended, nurtured
Yep.
curiosity. You talked a little bit before about innovation, uh, the dopamine, those
Mm-hmm.
positive responses and experiences increase engagement.
Yep.
And there's buckets of research that tells us that highly engaged employees are more productive, lower
Absolutely.
waste, higher
Absolutely. Yeah,
quality, better
absolutely. Yeah.
outcomes. So again, even if it's not something that's natural to you, leader, you can look for it in your team and encourage it in your team, without having to maybe necessarily devote your time, even though I
Mhm.
would encourage you to because it has positive benefits for you, but making it something that the team values and demonstrates and deploys very regularly, consistently, all those good, juicy words, I think is really important. So there is this fundamentally making curiosity a way of working has a benefit for your business, whatever type of thing you're leading.
Yeah, I mean, as you're highlighting some things, I think as you're pointing out, like even as a leader, you might not be as curious, but creating the container and this container
Mm-hmm.
for your team. But and I also have to say, as a leader, you have to model the things you want to see take place. And so if you personally are not curious, and yes, you can create for certain things curiosity, kind of more mm, the spaces where it kind of grows more. When it comes to you and people bringing you things, if you're not curious, you will shut things down.
Mm-hmm.
You will know like that to your point of like you would be confident that you know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so in that case, to me, then it's also like as people work through some things, is at least if you're not curious, just at least be open-minded. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To allow your people or consider that to allow your people bring things forward to you, in a sense of why don't we try this? Or how does this look like? And coming from the space of at least the open-mindedness,
Mm-hmm.
um, if it's not digging deeper or making time, as you were saying, for curiosity. But as well, to be quite honest, too, just even if if you're talking to anybody, if you're listening to anybody and you just adopt one statement, I would say, maybe that's for the 20 kind of 25, but it's like Tell me more. One time. If you literally, no matter what somebody's saying, if you just say at the end of that question or sentence, tell me more, and just listen. Don't run with solutions. Don't do anything. Just one time. Because it's actually good to say a couple of times, like completely, like people will get to something very different if you keep going.
Yeah.
But if you're really trying to save on time and really like, I don't have time for this, well, say it once. And if that's a practice, just like I said, a curiosity was a practice for me for a whole year, is that if you say this every day to every person one time, and by the end of the day, you've said it 30 times, for example, for anything, including your family, including your friends, including anybody, you just adopt that concept for, I don't know, a week, a month, just something, just like pick a time frame. Doesn't have,
Hmm.
definitely more than a day.
Even a
I
day, I
can
think you'll see
I can
benefits.
guarantee you it will be such an amazing and very different experience
Hmm.
for the person doing this, because you will learn so much more than you ever thought you knew just by saying that.
Yeah.
So,
I had a friend in college that kind of made fun of me because I had a trademark, heavy on the air quotes question that was sort of my version of tell me more. It was how so?
so you were, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So how so? Like you make a statement or tell me something and it's, well, how
Yeah.
is that? Tell me more. I really like how our conversation is creating this sort of iterative rubric for building your own curiosity. The
Mm-hmm.
get curious about yourself first
Yep.
conversation, and that keep an open mind. You don't have to have an answer for every single problem that your people bring you. You
Yeah.
don't have to shut things down because you think you know the answer. You can say, tell me more. How so? Whatever fits your
Yeah,
style
exactly. A style.
can
Mm-hmm.
be brought into that. So curious about yourself, open minded with others, even if curiosity is not your go to mindset. I think those are two things that you can do. I have in my mind what I think the third could be, if I can be so bold. And I think it's being very deliberate about stating when you're curious.
Uh-huh.
Um, I say it a lot. You've probably noticed that even in this conversation. Oh, I'm curious. It's a way to introduce that this is a question because I crave knowing more about you or the subject. And in terms of understanding other people, when there are cultural differences or differences of opinion, even a little bit of tension, saying, I'm curious, I'd like to ask you about X, um, that creates a space for people to know they're being invited, as opposed to some questions can come across as demands.
Mm-hmm.
The I'm curious is more of an invitation. In my own experience, like I ask a lot of personal questions because I get curious, and it's amazing what people will tell you. And I've been able
Yeah.
to talk with folks from different countries, different religious backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, you name it, and say, because it's genuine for me, say, I'm very curious. May I ask you about X? And I get to learn so much. And I think being very transparent that I'm here to learn is such an easy way to make the connections and to practice curiosity.
I'm smiling the whole time you're talking about this because it's such it could so I love this part is because I might take it a little different way. Um, the way you ask and you approach, and I've experienced you in saying, I'm curious, and then you're saying, I'm literally hearing you right now, may I ask you about this? It lands very differently. Then there are people that I've experienced actually, and I've watched in organizations who use that phrase, I'm curious, as actually preface for a passive aggressive question.
Yeah.
And so when you were saying, I'm laughing, I mean, I'm smiling because I was like, it's so easy to be like, and when you were saying, like, hey, sometimes I'm asking very personal questions, I was like, yeah, because I could feel in you, you're genuinely curious. I have also had people absolutely saying, I'm curious. And then they ask a
Hmm.
question that is a total jab,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely jab. And I've come back to them actually, and I looked at them and I went, are you actually curious or are you jabbing at something that you would want to know
Hmm.
because you have a story in your head? So, yeah, so that's definitely like, I'm like, oh my God, this is so. So, to me, as a leader or any human, actually, for all of us, when we say, I'm curious, are you genuinely curious?
Hmm.
Pay attention to this is back to yourself and knowing yourself and sometimes there's lots of us. I mean, we're getting back to like traumas and what we grew up with and what was modeled for us. And for the majority of people, we did not have really good communication modeling at all. We're
No.
all relearning, learning the hard way, all kinds of ways. So it's not to say like somebody's perfect or in any way is better than other, but it is what I'm saying is that well, and I'm gonna come from my culture. Our culture, definitely coming from my culture, it could be quite sarcastic and you
Mm,
could be
mm-hmm.
quite like quite sharp. And so when I know that energy, and so when that energy comes with, I'm curious, I was like, oh, watch me. Are you really curious? Because this is not how that's landing.
Oh, yeah. It's like, well, with all due respect, right?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's
With all
like,
due
oh,
respect,
come on,
I'm about to
lay it
be,
down.
I'm
Yeah,
about to not
exactly.
demonstrate respect to you. No, and
Yeah.
I would be lying if I said I've never said it that way. Of course I have, because it can seem like this is going to soften the blow, or I'm not going to come across as a
Yeah.
jerk. But this goes back to, am I aware of how I'm coming across, and am I managing myself? And am I even
Yeah.
managing my curiosity, the passive aggressive side of it? Because there can be
Yeah.
a curious question is, what the heck are they thinking?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Exactly.
what is my motivation? Is it because I want to learn, that I'm craving something? What is it? Uh, the early psychologists, it's an impulse to better cognition, or
Ah,
is it I want to be right and I want this person to be shown as being wrong,
yeah.
um, or I have a pure curiosity to know this person's deep personal details. What is my motivation? What is driving my curiosity?
Very true.
Is one of the questions I think is so important for leaders to ask themselves, and any person on the street as well. Is that's where you respect other people's boundary and you demonstrate care and love, as opposed to just garden variety curiosity.
I mean, I'm absolutely on board with that. It's just exactly, it's like as you were describing, it was just landing so lovely and so softly. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh, and I've had that statement done in
Yeah.
so many ways that it would be like, nah,
Oh,
no,
again,
we're not going into the curiosity here. You just
yeah,
want to know, which
yeah.
is fine.
My pants would be on fire if I said I'd
Yeah.
never done that myself, because I know I have. It is. And that's one of the reasons I think it's important to step back and talk about, it is a powerful tool,
Hmm.
because it has, I do, let's see if I can organize this thought. I do think that because curiosity is part of what makes us human, that we have a tolerance for people that ask why. We understand that asking why is a way of learning. We find the curiosity of cats entertaining. So saying I'm curious, it does open a door. And the question is, am I opening that door because I have an impulse to learn, or because I have an impulse to get more power, for example?
Hmm. Hmm.
So we have to acknowledge that curiosity creates waves in us, which is a messy metaphor. And that in the workplace, especially because of all the power dynamics at play, it's very important to understand. Am I using this to its best effect? And by best effect, I mean good and right, not the ends I'm trying to achieve necessarily. So, just to all of that to
Yeah.
say,
It's something to ponder. Yeah,
yeah,
for
know your
sure.
motivation. Know your motivation
It's the
because,
motivation and intention for
mm-hmm,
anything, whether
right?
it's curiosity or anything, actually. It's like, what is your motivation intention behind that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I want us to turn our focus a little bit to the positive impacts of curiosity. You mentioned dopamine.
Yeah.
There is research that shows people with high levels of curiosity experience more positive emotions. So there's obviously a neurochemical aspect to that. Um, but I want to kind of stay in this vein of positive emotions and talk about why joy, that in this
Yeah.
case has been generated by curious, open connections, why does that matter so much at work? Because I think joy at work is, again, one of the things we don't talk a lot about, but
No,
probably
and that's
should
actually
more.
why I brought it a lot into my work. And actually, like how you're saying about the word love and bringing it more to the forefront. It was like as I started my journey as a consultant and a coach, is like joy always comes up is because it's a part of me. So for me, it's always that's why that word was very important to me. So when we're saying exactly why is it so important at work, is it's just important in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend exuberant amount of time at work. And so to me, if we're not experiencing joyful moments throughout the day, in whatever in it, there's various forms of them, absolutely. And sometimes people, some call it's in positive psychology, it's like glimmers. So it's like noticing
Yes.
things that catch your attention, and it's rewiring your brain. So just like curiosity, it's rewiring us to see challenges and opportunities, it's rewiring us to be open into somebody else's perspectives. Joy to me, it just rewires us to a more, and it's sort of, there's like, positive piece that people go, oh, it's positive. We are, as humans, we are naturally wired for negativity. We have a negativity bias for anything. That's just our unconscious wiring because that helped us survive.
Yes.
Back to the traumas and survival and all of the, adaptive techniques. So for us to and see things differently, but more make them as a mindset or how we view the world, we've got to work at it. And some of us, I'm going to say for me, it's probably a bit easier just because I am naturally a joyful person. Like I
Mm-hmm.
find, as I was saying, those glimmers, like if the sun is hitting the tree and the rays are coming through the tree leaves in a certain way, it's beautiful. And for me, that joy that, it's like if we look at the definition, I wrote that down as well, is that it's a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. And so when you ask a question like, why is it important at work? I want to say, why not? Like, that
Mm-hmm.
is a part of my life. Work is a part of my day. And if I don't experience it overall, that's one of the reasons why I shifted roles and jobs in a sense, is to be like, how do I experience? And it's not that I don't experience challenges, but what brings me joy? And it's like this conversation is actually like this, it's going to keep me high for a while.
Yeah.
And exactly, like we wouldn't be talking if either of us didn't experience when we first met, didn't experience some side, like the joyful piece. It doesn't have to be exuberant. It doesn't have to be anything other than whatever feels good to you, however
Mm-hmm.
that good feels like. For some people, it's really high. For some people, it's this calm. I actually sometimes call some, like, when I check in with myself, there's this sense of calm joy. There's just, there's different variations in the volumes of it. Because to me, joy also, when we come to work, it fuels things very differently. It fuels innovation. It fuels resilience. It fuels creativity. It fuels all kinds of things that make our life so much fuller and so much richer. And so again, back to like taking things seriously, and my year of playfulness is that when we take things seriously, and our work is really important and we're really important, and
Mm-hmm.
how we do the work is, it's like it gets really tight, very tight and very constricted, and it's very difficult to be in that space. So that's me coming from my own experience when I'm like, this isn't pleasant. I don't like it. I want lightness. I do want humor. I want noticing things that are beautiful, and creating them, or noticing that somebody, like just saying hello or paying attention to somebody for 5 minutes lights their eyes up because there's a sense of connection. And it also feeds my connection, the value of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've lived a day in a very meaningful way. And so to me, it brings a different level and quality to life. And work is a huge part of our life. So that's kind of back to the
Yeah.
back to the work piece.
So one of the ways that my curiosity plays out is I'm always really interested in the origin of words. So etymology is my like my little secret pleasure. I like to chase after those meanings of words. And the way you're talking about joy demonstrates the root of those words. So we use joy and happiness a lot of times very interchangeably, but etymologically, they're kind of different. Happiness and happenstance or happenings, those come from the same root where it's connected to events. It's a circumstance. So our circumstances can make us happy or unhappy. Joy has the same root as the word buoy. So something that, regardless of what's happening in the water, it stays upright and above the
Oh, that's
waterline.
so cool. Yeah.
And that's why sometimes it is euphoric and other times it's peaceful. Because there can be instances where obviously the environment, and nobody can see my hand bobbing around, um, will influence the level, the intensity of it. But it's a thing that stays regardless of the actual circumstance. And that is that core of peace and contentment, satisfaction, whatever you want to call it, is so important in the workplace because the circumstances at work can change so rapidly. I come from a healthcare background, so that is the day to day. In an acute care setting, you can start, you can start the day great and it can turn in an instant. You can start the day awful and miracles can happen. And if we depend on our circumstances for our emotional state, we're just going to be whipped around all the time.
It's a whiplash. It's exactly that. It's total whiplash.
Yeah. But if we can create an environment where there is a steady core of whether it's peace or, again, euphoria, where joy exists, it's going to be easier for people to bounce back from the hard stuff, to innovate, to learn, to grow. And if there is science that demonstrates for us being curious brings this thing, this anchor point for us, why wouldn't we want that? Not just at work, but in our whole lives.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the boy kind of visual. And yes, people could not see your hands bobbing around. But actually, like for me now, when I have the joyful moments, I will think of it, to be quite honest, because I've had that as an anchor for other kind of things. I've never thought of joy, but it's actually for the harder challenges of the times. It's like, okay, how do I stay connected to the bottom of the ocean while, the wind or things are kind of bobbing around and moving? So it's that more of like a resilience piece and being within the storm, but staying upright. And so now I love that, like a pivot on it as well for the joy piece And the etymology that you were saying of like happy, like I've never thought of, is external factors and happiness and happenings, what's happening outside of us
Mm-hmm.
versus very much so joy to me is like that innate internal thing
Yeah.
um, that makes a big difference. Exactly. Yeah. I love this topic today just because it's actually reminding me of that word and having more and more of that in my life. Because with people that we think we know, again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this in air quotes, particular family, siblings, whoever, we stop being curious.
Mm-hmm.
We stop being curious who they are, what they are, and at the same time, we all know that we as humans generally tend to grow and develop and change. And sure, some don't change, but are you curious, why? Or,
Mm-hmm.
if you're noticing something versus I've known I've changed in a lot, even in just like the last couple of years. And so if somebody
Mm-hmm.
comes, and I notice it, this actually triggers me when somebody comes who've known me at that time a while back and be like, oh, you do this way, or oh, like I know this about you. And I'm thinking, not anymore, actually.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. That's not it.
Yeah. My parents have been married for 53 years
Wow.
and they are still learning things about each other, which I is delightful. Absolutely delightful, but it's just you can't know another person fully. But wanting to be known is one of our core desires as humans,
Yeah.
by,
Yeah. Isn't
by and
that?
large.
Yeah.
So, what makes it possible for us to be known? Well, it takes two mindsets:
Yeah.
curiousness and I would say courage to be
Oh,
open.
absolutely.
Yeah, and both of those take a little bit of courage actually,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
curious and to be open. And that's what makes connection possible.
Hmm.
And then connection is the thing that we can see play out in people's engagement at work, in their connections in their communities, their ability to learn and grow, all of the benefits that we reap when we have significant connections around us.
Yeah.
It does. There's that kind of trope about, in order to be interesting to people, be interested.
Mm.
When we're
Yes.
interested in other people, when we're curious, it makes us attractive to them. And it doesn't have to be like physically attractive. It can
It's
be
not physically,
emotionally
but it's
or
definitely, yeah, it's
intellectually,
definitely,
but that's how there is a lot of literature out there about how expressing interest in others is a way to start any sort of engagement. Um, and when you say interest in others, that's just curiosity wearing a business suit, really.
yeah.
Yeah.
Another kind of wardrobe. Yeah.
Hmm.
I completely agree with you.
Exactly. So I realized when I was getting my notes ready that this episode is going to be the last episode of 2024.
Mm.
I thought rather than my sort of, hey, what are your final thoughts, big ideas, or takeaways, my standard question, I thought what I would ask for this last episode of the year is to close with the thoughts or recommendations for how our listeners can put curiosity into practice
Mm.
in order to best foster joy at work in the new year.
Oh, very good. When we talk about curiosity is making space for it in different ways. So one of the ways is if you can just encourage experimentation and celebrate learnings or failures,
Mm-hmm.
or however you want to call it, celebrate it because this is how we're learning versus, oh, we made a mistake, fix it. So it's the experimentation and having that change the narrative and change the words around learning and the things that are, kind of working or not working. So that's one thing. The second one, I'm very big on check-ins for meetings if I'm leading a
Yeah.
meeting. And so one of the suggestions or ideas I would have, so, check-in can look a lots of ways. And I remember you also mentioned, time is definitely, keep in mind time, and time is precious. But you would be, I mean, I think so. Those of you who are doing check-ins, you definitely know that that connection makes a difference to people, and people kind of ease into a meeting. And so, if we are in the aspect of curiosity, I would say if you could start a meeting with a curiosity check-in, and a question suggestion might be like, "What's one thing you're curious about today?" And then, if you have time, as you know, as we were talking about time, is actually, one of the other ideas that I share with clients is called, like, for example, like an exploration hour. It's actually taking time aside and setting time aside and
Mm-hmm.
planning for it. But if there's a topic, or if there's something that you actually don't know the answer to, and you want, and you're comfortable with your team exploring, and is create the space for joy. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't create it in a work setting, meaning particularly as a leader, same thing. Set a little bit, 5 minutes in a group meeting. Ask somebody as you walk in, hello, like, in the morning, and it's like, what did you notice today that brought joy, laughter, smile on your face? Inadvertently, people, even no matter how grumpy they are, they will pause and they will think of something, and they will do it. And even if they roll their eyes, trust me, their internal space will shift,
Yeah.
you know. So those are a couple of things that I would say might make a difference. Yeah.
I would like to add two that I think are
Yeah.
probably complementary to all of that great stuff that you talked about. Getting really preoccupied with questions over
Mm.
answers. It's a way to build your own curiosity to make it less effortful if you find it that way. It's a way to show attention for other people. Whether you're getting curious about yourself, asking yourself questions, or asking them of others, just get really preoccupied with getting good at questions. And then I'm going to go back to something I said before, is let yourself be confident that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, turn
I
that.
love that one.
Yeah, turn the I have to know everything on its head, and be confident that you don't. Um, it's a way to be gentle with yourself and open up to all of the possibility of things you can
Yeah.
learn and discover and enjoy.
No, that's the one. The last one is for sure. It's like, be confident. I'm confident I don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
The part. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I love that one. That was the one. Have a whiteboard. I'm like, I'm writing this on the board.
Ooh, that makes me feel like I've arrived. Somebody.
Exactly. I am writing that on the board to remind me. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you. This is terrific.
This has been absolutely delightful. Thank you so much.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for such an engaging and super fun conversation.
Thank you for joining me in the comfy chairs. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and share it with others who are passionate about leading and learning. And don't forget, if you have a question for our new Comfy HQ series beginning in January 2025, I'd love to hear it. Check out the link in the show notes to submit your question and be part of the conversation. Until next time.